I've more or less covered the basic gameplay for Cloud in Chapter 1, and this is because you're going to be using him all the way through the game. Having said that, there's still a fair few things to go over with the character, so let's have a look at his abilities. Cloud's first ability is Braver, his classic Helmbreaker before anyone called it a Helmbreaker. It costs 1 ATB. It's got really slow startup and weak range, so you'll want to use it when you know it's 100% going to hit. It has a power of 400 and a heat value of 2. Its main use is as a combo finisher, or to cash out a stagger for a low ATB cost. Its heat value means it can cause pressure and stagger an enemy, but there are better abilities to do this with. Focused Thrust is the Buster Sword's ability, a dashing stab that covers a fair amount of ground. Its primary use is for building pressure to stagger enemies. It has a power level of 200 and a heat value of 6, the highest of Cloud's abilities. Triple Slash is the Iron Blade's ability. Good for crowd control, Cloud dashes from one enemy to the next, delivering 3 consecutive slashes. It has a power level of 600 and a heat value of 3, spread across the 3 attacks. You'd think that if you used it on one enemy that it will do more damage than Braver, but in reality the damage on the second and third hits gets scaled if an enemy takes more than 1 hit from Triple Slash. Disorder is the Nailbat's ability. This attack has 2 versions depending on which mode you're in, and will mode change into the opposite stance when you use it. In Operator mode, Disorder has a power level of 80 and a heat value of 1. In Punisher mode, it has a power level of 180 and a heat value of 2. So, why use it? You've got Braver for damage, Focused Thrust for pressure, and Triple Slash for crowd control. Why use Disorder? Firstly, it's a way of covering ground and mode changing, whilst also causing some damage and some pressure. But its unique property is that it's one of the only abilities in the game that can directly build ATB. Operator Disorder generates 500 ATB, essentially only costing you half an ATB stock to perform. Punisher Disorder generates 200 ATB. By performing Disorder twice back to back, you'll build back 700 ATB of the 2000 you've just spent, meaning you only need to build another 300 to use another ability. In addition, the ATB gain is not on a per use basis, but on a per hit basis. For each enemy you hit with Disorder, you'll generate an unscaled amount of ATB per hit. For instance, you could hit 2 enemies at once with Operator Disorder, and you've built back the ATB stock you've just spent. Or, hit 4 enemies with it, and you've got full ATB. Another good use for Operator Disorder is being able to just blow through attacks from range. Take a look here how Cloud just blows through the lightning wave attack. There's a good reason why this happens, and I'll talk about it later on in the video. Through skillful use of Disorder, you can use it to blow through attacks, hit multiple enemies at once, and build back ATB or generate ATB very quickly, allowing back-to-back use of abilities. Infinity's End is the Hard Edge's ability. Much like the Hard Edge, Infinity's End is all about power. It has a power level of 666 and a heat value of 0. It's extremely slow, slower than Braver, and costs 2 stocks of ATB. Its unique property is that its power level increases to 1110 against enemies that have been staggered, and this is the raw power level before any multiplier is applied to it. This means that on a base multiplier from a stagger, Infinity's End hits with a power level of 2886. Blade Burst is learned from the Mithril Blade. It has a power level of 378 and a heat value of 1. The attack sends out 3 waves of energy in a fan shape from the point of impact. Blade Burst is the only one of Cloud's abilities not considered a physical attack. Much like Mithril Blade's slant towards magic, Blade Burst causes non-elemental magic damage based on Cloud's magic stat. It's quite slow and not that powerful, but it does have a few things going for it. It hits multiple enemies with magic damage which normally would require the use of 2 materia slots. It doesn't cost MP, and it can land critical hits. To put its damage into perspective, a level 2 spell like Fire has a power level of 380, so if the enemy has no elemental weakness, Blade Burst is a more economical damage option, and it could cause a critical hit. And finally, Counter Stance is the ability learnt from Twin Stinger. Cloud adopts a stationary sword stance, and if he's hit with anything during this time, he'll counter with a sword attack. It has a power level of 520 and a heat value of 5. It also performs an attack of its own if it doesn't counter anything. This attack has a power level of 80 and a heat value of 1. It's very similar to the Punisher counter, except it can also counter ranged attacks and some magic attacks. Its other benefit is that it is available in both Operator and Punisher modes, and can cancel recovery frames like a dodge can. It has some invulnerability once it counters an attack, so some attacks that interrupt the Punisher counter cannot do so against Counter Stance. However, it doesn't build any ATB and has a lower heat value, so if you can use the Punisher counter, it's better to use that. That covers just about everything, apart from his limit breaks, which I'll go over later. Cloud is like any other JRPG main protagonist, good at almost everything and with an answer for everything, even if it isn't the best in class. But his unique disorder ability and mode switching make him an ATB generating monster against crowds of enemies. Find ways to exploit this and generate tons of ATB to help stagger and damage enemies.